Hi there, it's Philip Heitzen here, the founder of Art of Procurement. And if you're a regular listener, you'll have no doubt noticed that we've been adding new types of shows into the Art of Procurement podcast feed. Our goal to share stories and insights with you from across the world of procurement using a variety of formats and increasingly additional hosts. Last month, I introduced you to Katherine McCleery and her new show, Procurement for the People. We'll be publishing the first Tuesday of every month, and here is episode 2.
Hey everyone, welcome back to your new favorite show, Procurement for the People. I'm your host, Katherine, and I cannot wait to get into this one. As you know, these conversations are meant for all people, those within the industry and the stakeholders working with procurement on big goals for their business. I have a really special guest today. She spends a lot of her time bridging the gap between sales and procurement. And I think some of you might already be connected to her or have seen her incredible posts on LinkedIn about this very topic. Yes, you guessed it. We've got the one and only Jill Robbins on the show. She's been in procurement in just about every role there is and has such a keen sense for business growth. I'm excited to get into it, and I hope you all enjoy this one as much as we did.
Well, I wanted to have you on the show for several reasons. Your experience is very unique, and the goal of this show, Procurement for the People, is to break down the walls of procurement so that other areas of the business can benefit, and so we can all accelerate through many of the business challenges that we've been facing through the pandemic. And I love that for procurement. I love that procurement and supply chain can be the heroes and be the instigators of change. But before we jump into today's topics, can you just give us a little rundown of your experience? And that way we've got some context for all the expertise going forward.
Sure. Yep. So I did not in my wildest dreams think that I would be a strategic sourcing procurement professional or leader when I graduated college. I started working at a small airline in customer service. Then after 9/11, I was escorted to my car by armed security. Eventually that airline went bankrupt. I learned a lot of lessons, as we all do early in our career, about what good leadership looks like and what it does not look like. I went then to work for a large healthcare network, and that's where I was introduced to RFPs and strategic supplier management. I was in the IT function doing medical information sourcing. So that's where I learned the ropes, if you will. Then the department was outsourced to a consultant. And again, I decided at that point in my career, I didn't necessarily want to work for a consulting firm. Went to Ingersoll Rand, had a great boss there who taught me the ropes. And I was in a global role, dissecting category spend, negotiating with suppliers, and found that I was really good at it.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like you found your calling.
Yeah. I had fun. I had a great coach, and I was delivering value. I had autonomy. I mean, I was, negotiating, running, competitive events, entering POs into Oracle. So back then, you were the jack of all trades. You did it all. You would fax the PO to the supplier. You would, get the controller to sign the contract. You did everything there. And I created a productivity tracking system where we tracked all the savings. I traveled quite a lot, training people on that system. Then I went to Lilly, and I was in a variety of roles there. Went into P2P leadership. I was in Lean Six Sigma. I did a stint in business development. Had to check that core finance box at some of these large companies. When you report up through finance, you you have to do that. I hated my life. I lived in Excel hell. I did financial modeling. I was not an accounting major. I was a business major. But I tell you, I learned, some of these, experiences that aren't our favorite. That's where we grow the most. That's when my husband and I became entrepreneurs as well, and was able to, see the big picture in terms of what's possible. So then I went to Elanco Animal Health, led a global team there, and transformed procurement, built procurement from the ground up, had people reporting to me on every continent. And I took an extended leave of absence from the corporate world in June of 2020. And I've been doing consulting. And my husband and I have done a few other entrepreneurial things. We have a warehousing business. He just opened a cryotherapy business. So I believe that when you can see how to create value within a company and outside of a company, it makes you a stronger contributor. You truly think and act like an owner, and you can connect with stakeholders on a much more strategic level and see things through their lens. So that was probably a long-winded introduction.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is the bits and pieces of your career where you were on the ground and learning the ropes and able to see that skill set of being able to see the full picture sounds like that set you up for leadership in procurement, because without that, you wouldn't have been able to coordinate all those moving parts and help with the transformation of procurement. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Which a lot of people are taking on right now, which is why I think that this conversation could be very helpful. The part of your work experience we haven't yet touched on is, you did mention consulting,
Mm-hmm.
and you are working on the procurement side, but you're also consulting on the sales side. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So again, something I never thought that I would do, but having sat on the other side of the table for over 20 years, I'd say there's no better seat in the house than negotiating with suppliers to help suppliers really become that procurement insider. So with Business Fierce, we train companies and we also help them navigate sticky supplier situations when they're selling to enterprise clients. Procurement can be difficult to sell to and to work with, and to kind of get past that initial bid process when they have a select pool of suppliers. We also help them respond effectively to RFPs so they stand out amongst their competition. And it's been a lot of fun, Katherine. Our clients have seen significant growth in applying, just the basic principles and getting to know the business and respecting the procurement process. So often their sales leaders or the chief revenue officer will say, do whatever you can to work around procurement or strategic sourcing, go straight to the business. And for these large enterprises, especially in the last 2+ years, procurement, they hold the keys.
Yeah, gatekeepers now.
Yep, huge gatekeeper role, and they've been tasked with that by senior leadership. So when you circumvent the process, you can be in the penalty box or never considered again, and it could really hurt you in the long run. You may win 1 or 2 deals, but all that future opportunity that is coming through procurement, you won't be included in those bid opportunities.
So I'm going to go back to something you said. And for anybody outside of procurement that could be listening to this at some point, maybe on the sales side, help help us understand why procurement might be hard to sell to. Like, what does that mean? Because I think a lot of people will say that, but from a procurement perspective, why is that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And procurement is historically very short-staffed or lean by the nature of the beast. They're working with hundreds, if not thousands of suppliers, supporting multiple categories across the value chain, working with a number of different stakeholders. So as you knock on their door and you don't stand out or you don't have a differentiating value proposition and are cold calling or, blasting them with emails, that's not the way to earn their business. It's to learn what problems they're trying to solve, listening to, if they're publicly traded, listening to earnings calls, really understanding what the business is facing and, what their goals are, what investors are expecting of them, and tying your solution or your, good or service to that value proposition and differentiate yourself from your competition.
So in your time with sales teams and helping them sell through procurement, sell to and through procurement, as you say, what is that? What does that playbook look like? And feel free to share as much or as little as you want, but I feel like this needs to be, some of this needs to be shared so that marketing and sales teams put a little bit more effort and strategy behind selling to procurement, because I guarantee you right now there are many emails blasting out, a lot of cold calls being put on scheduled for January, February, first quarter. Should it be more of a customized long-term approach?
Definitely. Yeah. So take a step back and, like I said, research that target client or number of clients that you're looking to break through to. You may have, your elevator pitch. You may have, your standard sales pitch, and that's great. But it's cold, frankly. And procurement has heard it all. They've heard the same dog and pony for many, many years. They're the best negotiators in the company. They often train sales and business development how to negotiate deals because they've been doing it for many, many years. They're managing billions of dollars worth of spend. And it's not really about price, especially nowadays. It's that quality, speed, value equation that is key. So think like your customer thinks, think how procurement thinks, understand that strategic sourcing process, whether it's a 7-step process, there are different processes out there. And, ask, what's important, what's the evaluation criteria, what's the timeline, and really respecting that and building that relationship so you can be a trusted advisor when they have an issue or when they're trying to solve a problem. You would have a leg up in that bid opportunity or a project.
So can you think of a time, and I know this is kind of, off the schedule here, but can you think of a time where when you were in procurement, you were sold to or sold a solution where the process was appropriate and helped actually solve a problem that you had where you hadn't been the one to go out and look for a solution?
Yeah. So, one was, we had 2 suppliers in the lab consumables and supplies space. We had that in place for many years. And, we knew we needed to consolidate. We had some customer service issues. And one of those suppliers came to us, and they worked with our competition as well. And they had a differentiator where you could track exactly where that good was. Their pricing was significantly better. Their service was significantly better. So they came to the table unprompted. So it was just a regular, check-in meeting. So eventually we started to award more business and ultimately switch all the business around the world to that supplier because they were able to demonstrate that total cost of ownership was much better. And the business wanted the path of least resistance. When you're in research, you need timelines are critical. Having those supplies available is critical, and cost is always on the table. Everyone's looking to improve their margins. So that's one I would share, Katherine, that was unprompted. They did already have a foot in the door, but they didn't have the majority of the business. And just by kind of that slow and steady understanding, what some of the struggles were with the business, they brought solutions to the table.
Well, I love that though, because that means that if they had a foot in the door, that there was a sourcing event, a bid that they won. And once you win a bid and once you agree to a contract on both sides, letting it lie is never the best idea. So on the procurement side, making sure that the supplier experience is great has not been widely adopted yet, but that supplier experience staying at a high level means that they will come to you when they've got really great ideas for your business. And then on the other side, I think sales needs to work on this quite a bit. Once you do make a sale, to make sure that your customer experience makes sense and that they're getting everything that they possibly can out of the deal. And I know a lot of teams will pass over to customer experience, but what a great opportunity for growth on both sides. And I know that acquiring new business is about 10 times more expensive than selling to your own customer base. So there's the key, sales friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could add one thing, Katherine, so many sales professionals who have been in the business a very long time, they're measured on a monthly or a quarterly basis, or, they have targets. And they think, okay, great, I've closed this deal. The contract is signed. Like you said, I can pass this off to, the implementation team or the customer success.
Is one.
Yeah, right. Or whatever the case may be. But they think that the deal starts when the contract is signed. And, what we teach is that is the furthest thing from the truth. That's actually just when the work begins. And you need to prove yourself every day, go above and beyond. There is so much competition out there right now. And, you can lose that business just as fast as you got that deal signed.
Yeah, and I think something that maybe sales forgets is that procurement has more than one supplier per category, or they can. And,
absolutely.
There's a reason for that. Many reasons for that. And like you said, you've got to work every day to keep that relationship going. So I was going to ask you, but we've already kind of talked through it, the concept of open sourcing knowledge for procurement and the stakeholders that procurement works with. How do you feel about that concept? And obviously you're doing it right now. You're sharing your expertise for sales and making it a lot easier for salespeople to sell through procurement. But what do you think it's going to take going forward as far as sharing the knowledge and getting everybody on the same page and breaking down those barriers?
Yeah, I think you really need to start with the basics and let the data tell the story, and build that story, and look at where the opportunities are. Share those marketplace best practices, and demonstrate that value over and over again, and learn from one another. Don't feel threatened, because everyone is on the same team. And the value chain is so interconnected. These silos that so many of us have worked within, for so many years and decades, it has to be a thing of the past. That data, having that machine learning, that artificial intelligence, automating processes, all of those things are key. And listening to one another, listening to your customers, listening to the internal stakeholders, because everyone has a unique lens. And I've said this probably 100 times, but there is no better seat in the house than someone sitting in procurement, sourcing across the entire enterprise on the indirect side, because indirect touches direct, and that unique lens can really help someone who is in business development, help someone that is in sales, help someone that is in channel, and working with distribution. And there's so much that can be shared and learned, to improve internal processes, to increase those margins, and to allow people to work on what is fun and strategic. Everybody hates, admin work. But so many people are consumed with admin work day in and day out.
Okay, we're going to pause right there. There's a lot there. I heard you talk about the value chain, and I want to revisit that. But just to break things up here, just to make sure everybody's still listening and we get a chance to know you a little bit better, I'm going to shoot you a few rapid fire questions, and then we'll get to value chain. Okay. So we learned about your experience professionally, as an adult. What was your first job? Like actual first job?
First job was teaching clinics and kids how to play golf.
Really?
Yeah, when I was probably 13 or 14 years old. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you still play golf?
I played golf my whole life, and had a great teaching professional. And little kids like to learn from people that are closer to their age than someone who's an adult. So I did those summer clinics for years, worked at, driving ranges, picking up balls, and cleaning golf carts. So those were my first paychecks.
I love that. How old were you?
13 or 14 when I started. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't imagine my 14-year-old doing that. I would love for him to do that.
Yeah.
But kids are a little different these days.
Yeah. Okay. Outside of babysitting, which we all did when we were younger, but yeah.
Okay. Favorite TV show right now, streaming or cable or whatever?
Right now, Yellowstone.
I keep hearing about that. And then there's like an origin show now, right?
Yeah, I think there's like it's 1886 or something is like the origin show. Yeah. I mean, that's it's wild. It's interesting.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah.
Guilty pleasure right now.
Guilty pleasure. Just trying to get some sleep. And turning my brain off, as pathetic as that sounds.
I am 100% with you. We shouldn't feel guilty about getting sleep, but we do. Okay, last thing, and this will bring us right back to where we were before. How was that transition from, and I know you kind of answered it, but from non-procurement to procurement? And was it even called procurement back when you started?
Yeah. So when I started at the healthcare network, there was no procurement. It was within the function of IT. And then when I went to Ingersoll Rand, it was global strategic sourcing. So, when you're talking about consumer packaged goods, very tight margins, we had a very strategic role to play. And it's interesting because we were always invited to the table. We always had a seat at the table. The business wanted us to, do that category research, understand the marketplace, run competitive events, negotiate. And then when I went into the pharmaceutical world, margins were very different. It was a very sticky and oftentimes difficult conversation to even get a seat at the table or run a competitive process or share competitive intelligence.
That must have been frustrating to go from a very friendly and open, innovation-driven environment to back to being closed off from the business.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you learn how to sell and demonstrate your value proposition. But it's so much more fun to collaborate with a business who wants to work with you, leadership that sees the value, and rather than having to point to a policy and say, well, per the policy, you need to work with me. That's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Value chain. What is it? Why is it important?
Yeah, I'd say, it's not rocket science. The value chain is everything that keeps a business running. Every function in a business is part of that value chain and contributes either to the success or the demise, frankly, of the business. And it's been highlighted, in the last couple years, just how important everyone working together, having the right specifications, having the right, raw materials, goods available, services available. There have been various outages, and just understanding how everything works, having the data available of where everything is at, when you're expecting it, what that performance is of those suppliers. All of those things work together and make an organization either successful and profitable and sustainable, or ready to be eaten up by their competition.
So it sounds like the value chain involves everyone in the business.
Everyone. Yeah.
Would you say that there is visibility to that, like widespread visibility? Is that our problem right now?
I think that's our problem. Yeah. I mean, because everyone has worked, I don't want to say everyone, yeah, but many companies and people that I've talked to in my experience have worked in silos and have been rewarded, within their silos rather than reaching across and collaborating. And, you have to collaborate. That's the way to win, frankly. And it makes work more fun. And then you can share data, you can improve processes. You're more profitable. You're listening to your customers are part of the value chain. Even though they're a key stakeholder, if you're not listening to them, then you're not going to, survive the next 2 to 5 or 10 years.
So where do you think the architecture of a company, and I know that this is kind of a futurist question, but the value chain itself having been fragmented for quite a while now, do you see more of, what we would consider procurement joining some of these other departments and having having a sourcing expertise per channel within a business do you think it'll go that direction, or do you think it'll still, procurement will still be its own function?
Yeah, I've seen it done both ways, and I've experienced it. And, I've talked with many, colleagues that are in different industries. I'd say it's industry probably dependent, but I say from my experience, strategic sourcing procurement really is its own discipline, but it is so embedded and connected to every single facet of the business. And there's a lot of shared learnings that can happen, when you have one department. When you are embedded in different parts of the business, you become part of their process. And then that's where the data, I think, can break down. And, you talked about the value chain, and really it's about having the right master data governance design.
Sure.
And, having that connected across the entire enterprise. And that's really the key differentiator, I think, in these forward-thinking, mega successful companies versus the ones that are just reacting and trying to, look in the past at what has happened and putting pieces together versus being proactive and having a diagnostic toolkit, if you will, and running the business in a healthy and proactive way.
Okay, so keeping the core practice centralized, and then
Yeah.
obviously making some major communication and data streams available for those departments to to do their job even better. And I think that the link between procurement and other departments, especially sales and marketing, will be the key to growth.
Yep.
For sure.
I agree. Yep.
Okay, so last thing here, and we've kind of talked about what procurement can do to break down barriers, but specifically because I know that you have been an executive, you've worked with executives, you've consulted them. What can procurement leaders do right now, today, to set themselves up for a better stakeholder relationship next year?
Yeah. So, I'd say sharing, supplier performance, just having a basic scorecard. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, but sharing, top 10 suppliers, percent of spend with those suppliers, how they're performing, what does that tail spend look like, what percent of the spend is with, that bottom 80% or 75%. And letting them understand just kind of where there's leakage with those categories, and talking about payment terms, talking about availability of supply, all of those things, depending on the category, of course, but, having those open conversations and letting the data lead the way, because oftentimes finance is reporting from a GL or an accounting perspective and not a category perspective. And where procurement and supply chain can break down that barrier is, hey, this is from a market perspective, how you're spending money, where you're spending money, and here are alternative suppliers. And, kind of having that red, yellow, green discussion, because just breaking down those basics may not have ever been shared before. And it can really lead to a lot of discussion around innovation, around, alternative suppliers and performance.
Yeah, I can tell you for sure, being on the sales and marketing side, there's not conversations and there's not data provided on suppliers or supplier performance. It's purely anecdotal, and it can be really tough to make decisions, big decisions, when someone, then it becomes reactive and it's not proactive. So if you're out there, listeners, procurement and non-procurement, let's break down the wall and be a little bit more proactive and have more conversations. And I love that you said you can start those conversations by providing data, and that's something that it's the key. I feel like that procurement can uniquely provide everyone else in the business.
Yep. And it could be very manual based on where, systems are, but put in that grunt work, capture it, and then you've got to start somewhere. And then you can diagnose how you can start to automate and cleanse and be more proactive about getting those scorecards.
Awesome. You've shared so much from your experience and things that can be acted on right now. And that's the entire goal here, is to give our listeners a chance to hear directly from somebody who has actually done what we're talking about. What can we expect from you next year in 2022? I know you mentioned there's some side businesses happening, but for people that don't know you and would like to get to know you, what can they expect to see from you?
Yeah, I try to post regularly on LinkedIn, just, insights from what I'm seeing that people can benefit from if you're selling, like you said, to and through procurement. Expect to see more about the woman-owned warehousing business that we're growing quickly. And
What's the name of that one?
Freedom Warehousing and Solutions.
Okay.
So we'll be launching a website and, doing some social promotion in the new year. So expect to see that. Continue to see me active in the procurement and strategic sourcing space. That's my passion. I will continue to be active in that space. And I hope to be going to some conferences.
Me too.
When they start to be live again. I miss that. I think it's a great way to connect and, see one another and learn and continue to grow.
So is LinkedIn your most used social space, or are you other platforms that we should know about?
Yeah, primarily LinkedIn. And then I typically post it on my Business Fierce website as well.
Okay. And what's that website?
www.businessfierce.com. And then procurement consulting work that I've been doing in the biotech space is www.matchbookinc.com. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you have your hands full for the new year, and I look forward to your posts on LinkedIn. Please keep sharing what works. I think that sales professionals could really benefit from hearing from your side. So looking forward to more gems of knowledge from you next year. And I wish you the best of luck with the women-led warehousing. That is so exciting.
Thank you.
Okay, well, till next time, Jill, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing everything. And I'm sure this won't be the last time.
Awesome. Look forward to it, Katherine. And thank you so much.
Well, this was a really good one. I'm sure I'll say that about every episode, but this one really was amazing to me. I think Jill did such a good job at explaining both sides of the table and how to envision the bigger picture for everyone, not just procurement. And I hope you got as much out of that one as I did. And I hope you're also curious about who could be coming up next. Well, buckle up, because we've got Dr. Eloise Epstein, and she is not holding back. Get ready for her hot takes on procurement's digital transformation and why executives across the business need to care, should care. She's very passionate about this, and it's a good one. So till next time, remember this: procurement is for all the people.